I think I'm pretty fortunate that it all came, turning 40, COVID, having a newfound appreciation of my family, and then having a sharper view of like what I want to do. And going from a previous job, not that it was a bad job, I mean, it was the dream job that any ex-professional wants, right? You want to get into working with a big sports brand and doing stuff around the world and handling major contracts. COVID hit, and I'm like, that's not important to me anymore. Like at the end of the day, this group that I'm helping to make millions over here versus me going out in the backyard and running around with the boys, like what's the higher value? It's going out in the backyard with the boys. It's unfortunate that it took a global pandemic to kind of sharpen that viewpoint, but it did.
Wow. This is SAGA, a podcast about the people using their powers to shape thesis. My name is Octavius A. Newman, and we're speaking to Scot Thompson, better known as 1T, mentor, coach, and chief people officer here at Thesis. This is Scot's Saga. Scot, thank you for being here with me. You got the lavender out?
I do. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. How's your day so far?
It's good. Sun's out. Get to be around good people. So yeah, it's a good day so far.
Yeah. So what we're going to do between us and for the people, I want to talk to you about your story. I want to know about where you're at now, where you came from, where you see yourself going, all that good stuff. So let's start out with your title at Thesis is?
Title now is Chief People Officer.
Okay. Now for young Octavius, let's say from the past, who's up and coming, who's like, what does that mean in like layman's terms?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, it's really about studying, being aware of what people need and what groups of people need. Back in the day, I went to school to originally be a psychologist.
Okay.
The original goal was to help people on a one-to-one basis, right? Help them through their troubles, what's going on in their life, and help be that kind of guide. Not having all the answers, but just try to help them through it. That kind of pivoted into sociology and understanding groups of people. So I've always had this like fascination with people, what they need, and then the group dynamic and how that forms an idea or direction.
So are you Thesis's therapist in a sense? Like, is this the therapist?
Yeah, some days this is the session. So if you ask me like what a typical day is, there's at least 4 or 5 of these interactions.
Okay.
One-on-ones with folks, whether it's asking, how do I get to that next level in leadership, to I'm having difficulty talking to a coworker, how do I get my thoughts across? Or I've got issues in my personal life and it's bleeding into my professional life.
Wow. So it is really kind of like a bit of a therapist, school counselor.
With a little bit of business on the back end of it. So at the end of the day, there's got to be an outcome, right? Like how are we a better partner for our clients? How are we a better partner in terms of expanding our capabilities? So there's always that business tie-in from a CPO standpoint.
What's CPO?
Chief People Officer.
Okay, got it. All right, now it's all coming together. Yeah. Okay, so that's what you do now. You're here in Portland, right? This is where you live?
This is where I live.
How's Portland for you?
Portland has been the best thing in my life. Actually, I take that back.
Hold on. The best thing in your life?
Best thing in my life, because this is where I met my wife.
Ah, okay. And context.
Both my boys are born here.
Ah.
So in terms of like where where I was and where I'm at now, I wouldn't have had all of that if I didn't move to Portland, meet her, and she has been the absolute like balance in terms of how I operate. To then have my 2 boys, and I've reached the dream that I never thought I'd reach at the age that I'm at.
Okay, I want to get into that. Like the whole idea of a dream come true. I would like to, that's a perfect segue into going back in time.
Okay.
So we heard a little bit about where you are right now, what you do right now, what your day is like. Let's go back in time a bit. Where are you from?
I'm from all over the place.
Okay.
So originally born in Manhattan from immigrant parents, so from England and St. Vincent.
Okay.
Grew up in Brooklyn, moved to New Jersey, So still toddler phase, grew up in New Jersey,
What part of Jersey?
small town called Hackettstown,
Okay.
Warren County.
Okay.
Was there until about 14. Then I moved to Orange County, California.
That's a big move.
That was a massive move.
The whole family moves.
The whole family moved.
And how old did you say you were?
I was 15 coming to
Okay, so
SoCal.
before we get to California, tell me a little bit about, you said, where in New York?
So Manhattan to Brooklyn.
Manhattan to Brooklyn, okay.
So my grandma owned a building in Brooklyn. My aunt lived in Brooklyn.
Oh, so your people owned property.
Yeah.
Wow.
But my dad didn't want us to be raised in Brooklyn
Why is that?
for all the stereotypical reasons of growing up
Okay.
in the city. He was like, I'm not having my kids be another stereotype on the news or whatever it is. I'm gonna give them a different opportunity. And so my dad was very big on exposing me and my sister to every single thing possible. So growing up, it was soccer, Boy Scouts, church choir, youth group, had to have straight A's in school. Like I was in everything, chess club.
Had to have.
Yeah, that was the expectation.
Okay.
But we grew up in this small 10,000 person town, 3 black people in the entire town.
Only 3.
Mm-hmm. And we would drive every weekend into the city to see my grandma.
Okay.
So every weekend it's kind of, well, first off, we don't fit into the American mold. I got an English dad, doesn't know anything about America-ish, and then my mom's could care less. Don't hang out with anybody in the town, and then go into Brooklyn every weekend to see my grandma.
Mm-hmm.
So
His
I was never in like any one world.
His mother or your mother's mother?
My dad's mother.
Okay. Wow.
No one's ever asked me that before.
Well, I'm trying to the theater of the mind. I need to have all of my characters set up properly.
So my mom's side of the family was still in England.
Okay.
So I only saw them 3 times coming up.
Okay.
But my dad's side would make trips over. So 2 of my dad's older sisters still lived in England. The younger sister was in the States.
So I'm just curious. Did having your parents be from all these different places, how did that play a role in what was like for you to be in New Jersey, Brooklyn? You know what I mean?
I've always been someone that can fit in everywhere, but not fit in anywhere.
Tell me more about that.
In the sense of, I have an awareness of the world around me. So some kids growing up never left Jersey. They could care less. Like going to New York was like a big deal for them. Versus for me, that was like every other week.
Right.
But yet, I would go into those places, and even going overseas, and fit in because I'm family. That's who we are. Like we were the family that moved to the suburbs.
Okay.
But then not really fitting in because we weren't there day in and day out. So there's always been some element of just like slightly being outplaced or out of place.
So who's your friend group at this time?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Because when you talk about fitting in, not fitting in, and if you're a youngin', you know what I mean? Like a large part of that is like, I know for me, it's like, I have people that I'm connected with, but sometimes they're just the people that the parents are friends, so the kids kind of, you know what I mean?
So we had that when I was younger. So my parents did, Jack and Jill.
What's that?
It's a black, basically all things black culture, but it's for parents that have families. It's called Jack and Jill, but essentially it's a way to network and bond with people who have like-minded kids or same like profession.
Okay.
So we did that, but I never really got into it because I was always meeting up with other families that weren't in my town. So when you talk about like the parent friend groups, that happened a lot. But then my friends group was always in sports.
Okay.
So the teams that I was playing on, that was always like my community, but it was always done through the lens of like, you had a tryout and then now is your friend group where you had to like,
like a cohort.
But it wasn't like me building those relationships with those kids running around the neighborhood or doing something together that then bonded us to then be friends.
Okay. So sports coming at an early age then?
Early age.
In Brooklyn, New Jersey.
Sports has always been like the way that I've connected with folks.
Okay.
Because it doesn't, I have a tough time opening up to people, but sports allowed me to do it in a way that like, this is your tribe of people in the locker room or on the bench at that time.
Like a these are my soldiers, my teammates, we're going to execute, go to war, do this together. So there's some.
And then through every game, every win, every loss, like you just build on more and more onto that. But at the foundation was always that we're together as a team.
So is the friend group changing a lot, or is it like people are moving along with you?
It does. I have to admit, I don't stay close with people. Like it's like when I moved from Jersey to Cali, I tried to stay close, but it didn't really happen. Like I flew back maybe once or twice, but we kind of all like grew our separate ways.
Wow.
And even when I graduated from high school and went to college, I didn't stay super tight with there's probably 3 or 4 guys I hung out with all the time. We didn't stay tight because I was going to school to play soccer and they didn't go to college. They just one went into the Navy, one got a job straight out of high school, and we kind of drifted apart.
Having friends when you're young is good, weird, and hard all at the same time.
It's funny though, COVID, we actually started talking again because of COVID.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we
kind
of synced back up again, just doing FaceTime calls. And one of the guys, like his kids are older. I mean, they're all 16 and 18. So there was already a gap, like he had kids young, mine are a little bit, I had kids older. But we've found a way to connect again because of like recognizing that life's too short, that work, business, like all these things that we say that we think we need to do. And at the end of the day, all we need is community and our family and a roof over our head and some food. Like existing is what we, like that's the function of what we all do. And so reaching it back out to people that give you that sense of community, I don't know, somewhere in COVID, I kind of had like a aha moment, like that's the priority more so than anything else.
Community. I think we all kind of picked up on that a little bit of like, what really is all this? If you take away all this stuff, if you're like locked down and you can only do X, Y, or Z, then what?
Yeah.
A lot of things come into focus more clearly in a situation like that.
I think I'm pretty fortunate that it all came, turning 40, COVID, having a newfound appreciation of my family, and then having a sharper view of like what I want to do. And going from a previous job, not that it was a bad job, I mean, it was the dream job that any ex-professional wants, right? You want to get into working with a big sports brand and doing stuff around the world and handling major contracts. COVID hit, and I'm like, that's not important to me anymore. Like at the end of the day, this group that I'm helping to make millions over here versus me going out in the backyard and running around with the boys, like what's the higher value? It's going out in the backyard with the boys. It's unfortunate that it took a global pandemic to kind of sharpen that viewpoint, but it did.
Wow. That's deep. Scott, you deep. You come on here with the lavender shirt. You know what I mean?
It's camouflage.
And, and the depth come from the depths. Come all of this deepness. Okay, so it's cool to make that connection from the youth to now.
Yeah.
But you don't always stay in the East Coast. You said you moved to Cali. 15, 14?
15.
Okay.
And that was a hard move.
Well, first of all, I want to know is why you moved. And 2, I want the whole story. When you say something's hard, I'm just like, unearth. Tell me more about that.
How many layers deep you want to go? Because this is...
I mean, we got like an hour. Okay. So, you know what I mean? Let's try to just scale
to
make the best of it.
So my dad was an aeronautical engineer.
Wait a minute. You hear that word in movies. It's like, he's an aeronautical engineer. And they're like, oh, no. So what does that mean? What was Dad actually doing?
He went to school with the dream, passion of like handling machines, engineering, but in the essence of like aeronautics.
Okay.
What he ended up doing was designing large scale production lasers. So like lasers that cut welding in benches, lasers
Okay.
that cut the piping on a chair.
Okay.
His company in Jersey did that.
The company he worked for, or the company he owned?
The company he worked for.
Okay.
And so he was good at it. There was a Japanese company on the West Coast that recognized his skills and were like, hey, why don't you come out to the West Coast and work for us and head up our West Coast American division. And the opportunity was too great. The quality of life to go from small town Jersey to now, up and coming Orange County in a pretty relatively new area was too big to pass up. I didn't realize this at the time that my parents were dealing with a lot of money issues and like going to bat at each other over money. And this move, selling the house, was a way to like alleviate that. But I didn't know all that piece. Found that out later.
Okay.
So we make the move, basically better job. For me, it was pretty drastic because I had a tough time making friends as a kid. I had a lot of like racist issues in the town growing up. I just figured out my place on the sports side of things. I just made varsity as a freshman, which was a big deal back then,
Right. Yeah.
And then we're like, hey, we're moving. I think I just got a girlfriend too that year too. So it's the things.
Oh, hold on. Scott, not the girl. So you had to leave the love of your life.
I wouldn't go
career.
that far. I say
hyperbolic language. Forgive me.
The homecoming, like
right. That part in the movie. But this is a big deal. You're 15 years old, and it's like, pack it up. How did you feel?
Oh, I hated everybody.
Really?
Like literally was mad at everybody.
Okay.
Like nobody could do right by me. I was like, this is the worst move in possible. I think we did a trip to Disneyland as like hey, this is gonna be a good experience. We'll take you out to Disneyland. And I'm like, where? Like, it's hot as hell out here. It's the middle of December. I'm sweating my ass off. I'm hanging out in, the smog area, hanging out with Disney that I don't want to be around Disney. I don't want to be around these little kids.
Right.
So I'm just like pissed off. I'm pissed off for a good like 6 months.
Whoa. 6 months?
The transition. So when we moved out, the house wasn't ready.
Oh, wow.
That we're moving into. So we were staying in like this apartment complex. I didn't have any friends. There's nobody in the school that lived in that complex. And there might be like 1 or 2 people. So no school, no sports, middle of summer. I'm just hanging out with my mom, my sister. My dad's going to work. And I don't know where to go, what to do, and I'm just pissed off. Can't play soccer. I think my parents put me in all like honors classes, AP classes. And
They put you in the classes?
It was recommended by the counselor at the time, because do the visit, like, hey, you should go to these honors classes. I'm like, no. And they're like, yeah, you're going into those classes. So I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off just everything. Everything that I want to do, can't do. And I start off, and like the culture shock of Southern California compared to the East Coast is pretty big. Like the bubbles that you're in, little pockets, and then not knowing who to talk to or what to talk about. And it was just so different and foreign to me that I was just, and I'll admit, like I did not open up myself to be like, look at the opportunity of that move.
Yeah. But you're 15.
I was 15. I was 15 and stupid.
What do you know when you're 15?
I was focused on me. And I say 6 months because it was like 3 months of summer, and then probably 3 months of my sophomore year that it took me to like figure out and navigate like who's who. And fortunately, a guy that I went to high school with, he's like, hey, you want to come out and try, we got a soccer team down the road, come out and try this club.
Did you know you played soccer?
They knew, and I started to go out to like pick up, because it's like the time period we start doing like the captain's practices, you kind of. And here I am rolling out, looking all like a scrub, and.
Were you good?
I was good.
Okay, so you left that part out. But that's the part in the movie where...
But it was like, you don't know you're good.
Oh.
It's like I knew I was good, but not like good enough where someone's like, hey, you should come out and like check out our team.
Okay.
And so that, once I finally got into a club team and started playing, and then made some like friends, that's when I found my rhythm. And then I started to realize that this move was probably the best move for my entire life. Because I got scouted at a high school game So the UCLA head coach was out watching high school tournament soccer games, and he had seen me at a high school game, and that's when the whole interest and peak of like, oh, you could actually do this in college came up. But before that, it was just like, you just playing soccer because you're good at it. And
Right.
it was like the other extracurricular activity on top of everything else.
So at that time, what did you want? Did you have like, I'm moving in this direction, I'm
No.
going after this?
Nope.
So it's kind of directionless, or how would you describe it?
I wanted to do what I wanted to do, but I didn't have like an end goal in all this.
Okay.
Like I was good in school because I was told to be good in school. I was good at soccer because I just enjoy playing it. But I couldn't tell you like this was the direction I wanted to go. And I didn't realize it until I got a little bit older that everything I was trying to do was trying to emulate like how my dad kind of showed up for my sister, for the family.
Did you know that?
I figured it out later in life, and I told him that too. I was like, hey, like, it's like my bad. Like all the shit that I gave you back in the day, things that I said that I would do differently, or where you were wrong in this, and I do that. I was like, no, that's all bullshit. You were right. Like even,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say like even like going through like my parents getting divorced because that was a really tough time. Still had to come back and be like, hey, you were right, because he was always trying to do his best to provide for all of us and give us all the things that he didn't have. And he does that from like a immediate family, but then also his siblings and everybody else. Like he's always trying to make sure that he's that rock for everybody else. And so there's a level of like looking up to that, trying to like create the family that I have now. So like when I say like, hey, I got this home, I got an amazing wife, I got 2 amazing kids, like to me, like that is like I've made it. I'm not trying to chase after anything else because there's something else for me to like. I don't need anything else.
Right.
Now all it is make sure that they have what they need to then make sure that their kids and their family have what they need.
Wow. Taking care of setting up for the kids. That sounds like that's the trajectory. Am I hearing it right?
If I could build a compound tomorrow and have all of us, you know, around some communal watering hole or communal like space, that would be the next phase of this. Where I know that I can keep my eye on things, but people can still like go do their own thing.
Right.
But they know they can always come back to like that as their foundation.
But at this time in the story, when you're how old?
15, 16.
15, 16.
Just a dumb, trying to hook up and just play soccer. That was it. That's like literally the 2 focuses of my life.
So, but someone notices you.
Yeah,
they're like, yo, you're nice. Come ball with us.
So that was once the UCLA head coach, a guy named Ziggy Schmidt, once he scouted me, that's when everything else started to open up, where it was like Notre Dame reached out, Santa Clara reaches out, different schools start to, you know, be like, hey, why don't you come on a recruiting trip, or hey, what do you think about playing? But I really didn't think I was good enough until junior, senior year of high school. Because at the time, UCLA was, that entire roster of players was literally on the Olympic team.
Oh.
Like the entire, like half the team had just gone to the Pan American Games the year before. Other half of the team is literally on the Olympic team.
Well, that's clarifying. Yeah. So what does that do for you in your head, in your mindset? Like I'm assuming what it does, but like, what's actually going on?
I've never looked at myself as someone that's like better than somebody else or too good to, like I've literally, my whole style of play and kind of how I show up for other people is just trying to work as hard as I possibly can or outwork other people.
Okay.
Because I was never the most technical, the most skilled person, but I was always hungrier, faster, worked harder, jumped higher. So even going into college, like going into school, it was like, hey, you're a freshman, you're probably not going to play. Or, hey, we got all these upperclassmen. I got guys that are leaving school early to go play professionally. You're probably not going to play. I'm like, all right, cool. I was like, I remember I told him, the coach came to our house And we had a dinner, and he was telling me the story, and he's telling me, hey, you may not play until your sophomore, junior year. And I was just like, no, I'm gonna play.
You're like, watch this.
Like humbly, yeah, but I'm gonna get on the field, and I did.
Yeah.
Now, I was a defender at the time, so it's not like I wasn't getting a ton of minutes, but I was finding ways onto the field. So it was like, end of the game, we need someone just to run and put pressure on somebody. All right, we'll sub you in. Or so-and-so got hurt, and I got 15 minutes here, or 10 minutes there. And it's just started building up on that, whereas 10 minutes here, and then make a crucial tackle to save a goal. Or I think I had 5 or 6 goals my freshman year, maybe 8. But like freshman defenders don't score goals in games, right? So I'm finding ways to get on the field, even up until, I think I had, we were in the Final Four. I got subbed in, we were losing, and I got the game tying goal to go into like quadruple overtime.
Wow.
But like that doesn't typically happen for freshmen, especially freshmen at UCLA, right? So it's like, that's always been like my ethos now I show up, and that's kind of what every year of college was a little bit of that, but getting better and learning until we won the championship in my senior year.
Wow. So that's a large change from you probably won't play.
Yeah.
To like, so what's the motivating thing internally that goes, well, I hear what you're saying, but it kind of feels like I'll be the judge.
Yeah. When I was younger, I was very competitive. Like I was the kid that would cry if we lost a game.
Okay.
I needed to score all the goals. I needed to be on the field. And if I wasn't scoring, I was just getting somebody else set up. And all through high school, all through college, still super competitive. Like I was not competitive where like I was cheating to win, but like just up until that edge.
Okay.
Like,
right.
Yeah.
Not cheating, but
yeah,
depending upon how you look at it, someone could see it differently.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was the mindset when I was a kid. Like I had to win. Or if I wasn't winning, I had to be on the winning team, or I had to be at a minimum like the number 2.
Yeah.
So even just like, I remember in middle school, I always like ranked who were the best athletes. And I was like, all right, I'm number 2 right now, but I'm gonna be number 1. Or like when I ran track, it was always, I hated being the one in front. I like to be the one to chase and then eventually win.
Okay. Okay, so it sounds like there's a story in your head of who you are.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's one thing to smoke everybody. It's another thing to have the cinematic moment, the slow-mo thing when you catch the guy and you defeat them at the end.
So there's a couple track meets. You have to go in the archives and find the video, but there's
video.
There's a couple old school, like.
Well, we got to get that. We got to get the documentation. We got to get the evidence.
But there's definitely track meets where we'd either be, so 4x4 relay, one time around the track. We'd be like losing, and I'd be the anchor leg. And I would most times like catch that whoever's in first, or if I'm like down by 2, down by 3, I'd find a way to win.
Is that identity?
That's definitely my identity.
Of like, I'll carry us. I'll explain it in your own way.
Yeah, like when I played here with the Timbers, it was the same thing. Like you could count on me that I was going to make the extra run or the extra movement, or either just get back on defense or get up to join the attack. Like I would do that because it was important for me to like. 1, I enjoyed doing it, but 2, it was important for me to like cover for teammates to make sure they knew that I would do that extra work for them.
Why was that important to you?
I think that's just how I wanted to, how I enjoyed playing, but what I also expect from other people. So if there's gonna be times where I'm not at my best, but that whole team, family, community mentality, like somebody else is gonna help cover that.
And did you learn this in college? Or did you learn this where'd you learn that?
Honestly, I think I just picked it, I finally put it all together now.
Oh, just now?
I mean, the whole
We
community.
just figured it out just now.
But the combination of like how I rolled up individually, because I mean, I was a selfish kid. I was selfish up until past my 20s. Like when I look back at how much my parents sacrificed for me, or sacrificed for me and my sister, or some of the shit that they put up with, or like my mom just retired. She moved up here, lives with us.
Okay. And
she brought up all her stuff. And we're going through the archives and all of her, the gear. She has a trunk of newspaper clippings, articles, letters, recommendations from coaches, all saved from stuff that she had put together as part of like my profile that went out to schools. Wow. Because back then there was no, there was no portal, there was no website. Right. You literally had to like hustle and be like, hey, here's my resume as a player. Mm-hmm. She did all that.
We take moms for granted sometimes.
All the time.
Like, whatever, mom. She's like, if you only knew, young man, what I've had to put up with, and what I have done for you. Yeah. Wow. That must have been, so you didn't know she had that?
I knew she did it. I didn't fully appreciate it until older. And now, having gone through it with my kids, so there's definitely a level of like, I have my own kids now that I recognize what they did, what they sacrificed to make sure I had what I needed to be successful.
Yeah. We talked a lot about what happened in the early years. We talked about high school, but we jumped to college. Like, so you got recruited to play soccer in college.
Did. And
you won a championship as you playing for UCLA.
Yeah.
Is that a big deal to you?
If I had to rank the top moments in my life between meeting my wife, having my kids, going to UCLA would be in the top 5.
Okay.
Like that single-handedly was probably one of the best experiences I've ever had.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you give me like the number one reason as to why, or like a sentence?
All of it. It's being on.
There's like royalty?
There's the history of UCLA and being a part of the number of championships. So I think we're at 125 now, 27.
Wow.
So UCLA, number one national championships in the country. Mm-hmm. The campus itself being in Westwood, and like when you drive in, and no campus beats that. The people, the level of play, like all of it. Like being able to figure out myself as an adult, or come into like teenage years into an adult in that environment, it was amazing.
So at this time, are you like, I'm gonna play professional soccer? No. I'm gonna. No. I'm always interested in the story of like where you think you're going at a certain point versus what actually happened. So in your mind, freshman to senior, where's your trajectory in your head? Where are you going?
Honestly, I was taking 1 year at a time.
Okay.
Just being like, I'm just happy to be here.
Okay.
I did not expect to play professionally until I was on the cusp of the Olympic team. So the way it works, you have you're playing in college, or some guys are playing professionally. You get invited into the training pool, and then from that pool of players, they select players to go to Olympic training or Olympic qualifying.
Okay.
So I was in that pool of training. So this was the tail end of my junior year going to senior year. So I'm in this pool, I'm playing with some of the top players in the country, leave the pool, go, we won the national championships. That was the fall of 2022. I actually didn't get
2022?
Yeah.
Wait, what happened now?
Sorry, 2002.
Okay, I was about to say, sorry. Do I know what year it is? I was just like, you say this so confidently, like I'm wrong.
2002.
Okay. Right.
So we win the national championship in November of that year. Didn't get to celebrate with the team.
Because?
I flew out to go to training camp for the Olympic team that night. Wow. So I missed out on the celebration. I missed out on the White House. I mean, George Bush was in office. I wasn't like too hurt, but it is like.
Okay, all right, got you.
But I never got like my photo, the team photo, the background, all that. Right. So I missed out on that. but I'm going into Olympic training and didn't have an agent, knew the draft was coming up, but didn't really know I'd get drafted. And all the other guys on the Olympic squad either had an agent or knew where they were going ahead of time. And in a roundabout way, like I found out that the Galaxy was interested because the head coach at the Galaxy at the time was the guy who drafted me or recruited me to UCLA.
Okay.
And that's kind of how I like figured it out. But there was no like, oh, I won and I'm going to go play pro tomorrow. And that's I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do this. MLS was still, Major League Soccer was still pretty young. And I was on the trip. We were in Portugal. We were in Portugal at a tournament when I found out I had gotten drafted. I think it was like a second round draft pick.
Now, Scott, there's a certain amount of I slipped and fell and became a professional soccer player that I'll accept. There's another level of it that's like, come now, please. You know if you're good.
I honestly
did
not know that I would go play pro.
Okay, but did you have aspirations, dreams, goals? Hopefully, maybe, I'd like to. Anything like that?
It's always been like, I would like to go do that, but I didn't know for sure.
So what was the alternative? Where were you moving towards if that didn't happen?
Honestly, I'd finish up school and probably go be a teacher.
Okay.
Like that was literally what I was, some type of either education, maybe some social work. I hadn't decided yet. But I got drafted. I was still in school, but then I got hurt. And it was like either get hurt, recover, and try to come back, or get hurt, take the entire year off, and then stay in school. So I stayed in school while still technically on the roster for the Galaxy.
Okay.
And then come back the next year, wasn't fully fit, and I got loaned to up here to the Portland Timbers. And that's where I found out about Portland, packed up all my gear, drove up. And I think we had won the league title that year. So that was 2004. Came back to the Galaxy the next year, didn't make the squad. Portland was like, hey, we have a contract here waiting for you if you want to come play. And that's how I made it up here. And 7 years later of playing here in Portland.
So soccer brought you up to Portland.
Soccer brought me to Portland.
Officially.
Okay.
And let's just make it clear, professional soccer player.
Professional soccer.
In case it was not clear.
I say that with an asterisk because there was still a lot of growing the game. So at the time, while the Los Angeles Galaxy was in Major League Soccer, the Portland Timbers were in the next division beneath it.
Okay.
So you still had, I think at the time, the owner of the team owned the baseball team that was here and the soccer team.
Okay.
And the soccer team was second fiddle to the baseball team.
So
the priority was making sure the baseball field was already set up. It wasn't a soccer stadium. There was still dirt in the outfield. The turf was hard. It was grimy. It was gritty. But the fan base here was probably the best in the country. You know, we were averaging anywhere from 8 to 14,000 a game.
Oh, okay.
Which some MLS teams at the time couldn't average that.
Okay.
And that's what made me fall in love with Portland. It was honestly like the people, meeting my wife up here. And I was
the
like,
fandom.
Yeah.
For the team that you played for, like you felt love.
There was legit love, and it wasn't. It was authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Like we would have a game, and we would literally go across the street to the Bullpen. Was the name of this bar.
Okay.
The Bullpen, and have drinks with some of the fans, some of the Timbers Army folks.
Mm-hmm.
And it was those interactions that where I felt comfortable enough to bring my mom in there to have drinks afterward, or have my wife come in. Like, there's nowhere else in the country where I could say I could go hang out with like diehard fans 5 hours earlier, and then go tell me their personal life stories and go hang out in a bar afterward. Mm-hmm. Not in LA, not in New York, and that's what made me fall in love with the city. It was the genuine people and how they welcomed me here in a time when, coming off being injured, 2 years of not really playing, to have a place that I could like feel like is me, was kind of like a little bit of an outcast, but feel welcomed. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you talk about falling in love with Portland.
Mm-hmm.
Professional soccer player, that's what brings you out here. But you've also talked about meeting your wife here.
Yeah.
So one thing, what brings you to Portland? Another thing, what keeps you in Portland? I'm curious about what is keeping you in Portland. What has kept you in Portland?
She has definitely kept me in Portland.
Mm-hmm. Is she from Portland?
Not from Portland. Essentially the Beaverton, Tigard area.
Okay.
So suburb of Portland.
I understood that reference. I know where Beaverton is.
Wow, that's good. Okay. She was born in Texas, but grew up here in Portland or in Beaverton. And her grandparents were some of the first people to come to Tigard.
Okay.
So literally like ton of farmland, nothing's there. They put a house down.
Okay.
Her grandfather was the mayor and city council member for a number of years.
Your wife's grandfather was the mayor?
Of Tigard for a period of time, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So
all right.
She has deep roots here. Her whole side of the family's here. So if my side of the family is all over the world in different countries and doing our thing, her whole family is here.
Right.
I'm like this like up and coming, no name soccer player. They welcome me in their home. That summer when I first met Meredith, super hot. They're like, hey, come stay with us. I had no AC in my place at the time.
Oh,
so like,
not
hey.
that she was hot, but it was hot.
I mean, she was hot, and yes, it was hot.
Combination of hotness.
Yes.
And everything needed to cool off.
Yes.
Come on in.
Yes.
I got it. Okay. Right. So go ahead. You were saying.
Yeah. So when you talk about like what kept me here, it was her, her family. Like I don't give them enough credit. Like they have been nothing but welcoming since I first met them, and yeah, like she's really every step of my professional journey in soccer, afterward, figuring out life, she has helped be that like guide and sage to get through it.
Sage wisdom is extremely valuable. Someone who's able to speak into your life about what's going on that can give you perspective, shout out to that.
Yeah.
You can't pay, you don't have enough money to pay for that. Somebody's gonna really give it to you. So that's great. Well, you don't play soccer professionally now. What's your relationship with soccer now?
It's an interesting one. So I'm a fan at the professional level, but I'm still a coach at the youth level.
Okay.
And so I still coach my kids. Like if I could do one thing and that was paid for everything else in my life, I'd probably be a coach.
Okay.
And just coach one team, and that would be like my hobby / passion, that I could do that every single day and be happy doing that. Like coaching, and not just coaching like the tactics and the technical side, but coaching young people and helping them like get through life. Like I enjoy that.
It's interesting that you say coaching people, young people for the rest of your life. And what's your role thesis? Chief People Officer.
Yes.
So in a sense, not exactly soccer, but some things are consistent throughout your story that I'm noticing.
I have learned a lot through sports and through soccer. Not everybody gets that opportunity. So it's how can I share some of that, what I've learned, to other people who don't necessarily use sports or soccer as that medium.
Yeah, that's great to see that connection come together. So speaking of what soccer's taught you, you coach now, coach your kids. At a later date, I'd love to hear what kind of soccer dad you are, what kind of coach dad, because there's the various kinds.
I can tell you, it is very straightforward. If I'm there as a parent and a fan, I'm the dad that's like not talking to anybody. I stand there stoically.
Okay. People
try to like talk to me. I'm like, not trying that right now.
Okay.
Because
business.
I'm very like, I'm introverted naturally. So it takes a lot for me to like get to know people at a deep level. or just to open up, right? Even
Okay.
this is like takes a lot of energy out of, like not out of me, but takes a lot
Yeah.
to share this much.
Yeah.
So when it comes to watching games and watching my kids play, I'm really trying to watch them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to have like a side conversation about life or the club or Timbers, Thorns. No, just trying to just focus on them.
Right.
As a coach, I try to be very consistent. As a coach and as a parent, I try to be consistent. I don't get overly excited. I don't get overly pissed off or frustrated. When I talk to the kids and they hear it in my voice, they know if I'm disappointed and they know if I'm like, hey, that was a great play.
Yeah.
But I try to keep it consistent so that they don't think of, yeah, I did something amazing, I'm the shit. It's like, no, you might have made a great pass, but you need to go do it again. Or you made a good pass, and then get your ass on defense. Or you scored a goal, but we're still down a goal. So it's at that level of like, you can't get up too high until the game's done. Just like you can't beat yourself up if you made a mistake, because we all make mistakes.
Right. Wow. Okay. That paints it.
Did I get it in a...
No, I mean, I got it. I see the kind of dad-coach combination. Is that hard for them to transition in between the different roles?
That's a good question. I don't...
Well, I guess we should ask them, huh?
We probably should ask them.
Bring them out. Bring the kids out.
We've had some pretty deep conversations about the balance between the two. Because my oldest son has been a part of the game since he's been born. I was still playing professionally when he was born. So he had 2 years of being pulled around in the stadium and being, hanging out with the other parents that obviously weren't on the field. He had a number of years when I was trying to figure out how to be a professional coach, that he was then a part of all of it. And he had a number of years of like then being thrown into saying, hey, like you are the son of an ex-professional player, like here's the expectation. The younger one is in a position where we've kind of figured things out, figured out the rhythm and flow of life, balancing sports, school, work, everything else. So he's in a much different spot than the older one was. Whereas, retiring, no one teaches you how to retire. There's no playbook. And you got to figure out a lot of shit when you retire. It was a pretty... I don't have a midlife crisis now because I went through that when I retired from playing.
Okay.
So
you had the midlife, you had the post-professional athlete crisis.
If you ask any former athlete, the hardest time period, it's that window.
How big is the window?
Depends. I mean, it can be anywhere from a year to, some guys don't figure it out. Because you get so used to having everything being structured around you to show up to be able to play, that you don't really know, you don't know your identity. I got a buddy of mine who, we're a bunch of man babies running out there because we're always being taken care of. Like
wow, okay.
Where some people graduate from college and they figure it out. We never really got that. We went from college to then professional with people still taking care of us. So while you're an adult, you're not really an adult.
You're adult in age, but in maturity, you're still...
And then you get done, and all of a sudden, you go from this livelihood that's gone, having all these people come out and pay money to watch you, cheer for you, want you to sign autographs, do this, that, and the other. That's all gone. And now you're in this space having to watch other people come up and do what you did. And not be resentful because they've essentially taken your spot.
Yeah.
Like I've had young guys who've lived in my house who have literally been brought in to replace me.
That's something.
Yeah.
That, I'm sure, creates humility. It like snatches it out of you. You know what I mean?
It's humility, it's angst, there's anger, there's depression, there's all the emotional spectrum that goes into that.
Yeah.
And it's something that I don't think we, as a society and as athletes, talk about it enough. Because there really is no support network. Like when you're done, you're done.
Yeah. But you transition when you're done.
I did, but it was a hard transition. And I made a lot of mistakes during that transition.
Yeah. What What's the biggest thing that if you could just call out one thing that you took with you from that transition into the next chapter of your life, what would that be?
Man, that is a deep, deep question.
I'm out here, Scott. You know what I mean? I got a million of them. I'm only giving only giving you a couple, only an hour's worth.
What is one thing that I could take with me? God. I would say I would need to forgive myself for the mistakes that I'm gonna make. And know that it's okay.
That's good. I think that's everybody. I think that's good. That's a good thing to reflect on, period, because yeah, those mistakes are going to happen. Did you learn that in the transition?
I think I learned that in the transition, after the transition. When I talk about having like an amazing wife and partner, she taught me a lot during that transition. My parents taught me a lot during that transition. Like, I was in full display of all of my mistakes that I made. And the only reason why it's okay is because we grow in that area of when we make mistakes. And so, yes, I did learn from those mistakes. I'm still learning from them. But it's the awareness of I'm not perfect or infallible. Can't even speak right now.
Infallible?
Infallible.
Is that it? Let me know, internet. Carry on. Infallible.
Infallible. But there is an aura of like, I'm invincible. And then you get humbled real quick. Real quick.
So where do you go after soccer? After professional soccer?
Like every other person, you kind of try to keep your foot in the game. So I went from doing some work in the front office for the Timbers. So I'd always done community work while I was playing. So any type of like charity events, appearances, stuff that had to do with like Boys and Girls Clubs, kids, I'd always volunteer to go do that. And so I parlayed that into the front office. So I was doing brand ambassador work. I was coaching, trying to hustle and do 4 or 5 side gigs to keep food on the table, and that made its way into then running a youth club, to then being the executive director of that youth club, to then going into dealing with some pretty big clubs, leagues around the U.S. and around the world. But ultimately, coming out of George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, COVID, having a pretty like deep reflecting moment of like, what do I want to do with my life? Do I want to keep helping to make corporations and certain people billions and millions, like make money, or do I want to like have an impact or a deeper impact on people and people who need more support than multi-billion-dollar corporations?
Yeah. So how do you end up at Thesis?
I ended up at Thesis in the tail end of my days in the sports marketing world. I was spending more time focused on building communities and fields for marginalized groups, specifically Black and brown communities that don't have places to play soccer. I was spending more time working with Black players in the league and supporting them, and less about negotiating contracts. And while all doing that, focused on internal employee resource groups that were focused on uplifting our community. And so that, randomly, I was speaking to a friend of ours about kind of what I want to do in my career and pivot, and this person was like, hey, there's this agency in Portland that's looking to hire a head of engagement. Head of engagement focused on diversity, equity, inclusion work in the agency space. And I was like, oh, okay. Didn't really think twice about it, to be honest. I had a couple other gigs that were, open to me, a couple other brands that were like, hey, you can work for us, but you got to move to Baltimore, or you got to go somewhere else. It's like, I don't know if I really want to do that. It still stays in the same vein of like doing global sports, but not stuff locally. And after sitting down with some folks here and kind of asking around, I was like, all right, I'll take a stab at this and see what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
And then here we are. I get to try to convince folks like you to come to Portland.
Chief People Officer. No big deal. Easy. So, crystal ball time, right? If you're just like, you swirl the ball around,
okay.
right? If you're looking to the future, what do you foresee yourself moving towards doing as time goes on? What's the future? What does the future hold for yourself if you were to estimate and project moving forward?
That's a great question. This right here is what I would like the future to be.
Podcasting?
Not podcasting.
Okay. Okay.
But watching very, very good, not even good, extremely qualified folks that have a vision and seen it come to fruition, and having it be in a situation where it's not the chief of whatever, or the CBOs, or the COOs, but it's the folks that are actually in the day-to-day work, or the folks that are just coming into the space. They're the ones in this chair getting the interview. They're the ones that were unveiling their backstory. So it's an expansion of what you're already doing, while also how do we provide a wider funnel or a wider pipeline into these moments and highlighting these stories.
Yeah. Well, Scott, I think you're on the way to do that. From you even being here, just sharing this story with people, my hope is that people are inspired, encouraged, affirmed. I am affirmed, looking at you, seeing you, knowing your story, knowing more about you, engaging with you, working with you. It gives clarity of like, oh, that's what's possible, you know? So I appreciate you sharing your story with me. And even just straight up, between you and I, affirming me. You know what I'm saying? Like advocating for me to even be doing this. So I appreciate you very much.
Well, I appreciate you. And I would say that's probably the easiest thing, advocating for you, because the talent's been there since I first met you. So I got to give you props and your flowers, your whole crew, because this has been an amazing experience. But I already knew it was there. So the bar was already set, and you've somehow exceeded that bar.
It means a lot. Thank you for sharing your story. It means a lot, and my hope is that other people who are watching this and listening to it get to benefit a piece of what I've got to benefit of in real life. So thank you for being here, Scott. Thank y'all for listening and watching. Peace.
You killed it.
We've done it.